Welcome to In My Feelings, a safe space to talk all things NBA. I'm Big Waz. Let's go. All right, folks, let's get into Fact or Feelings. First up, the Jontay Porter gambling scandal is a harbinger of things to come. I'm going to say that's feelings, y'all. Jontay Porter, the brother of Michael Porter Jr. Jontay Porter plays for the Toronto Raptors. He's now under investigation by the league for some suspicious gambling activities around some of his plays on DraftKings. On the nights of March 20th and January 26th, there were Jontay Porter bets available around his over-under on three-point field goals made. The under was 0.5. And in both of those games, DraftKings, doing their due diligence, they noticed that their biggest winners of the night was on this bet on this extremely obscure, hardly in the NBA, on a two-way contract player, right? And they found this rightfully to be suspicious. One, because this guy is a nothing in the league. The idea that the public or all of this money would be coming in on that type of bet for this particular player makes no sense when most people bet on players and teams that they're familiar with. This idea that a backup in Toronto, a team that has been irrelevant all season, for one of their more irrelevant players coming in, obviously raised a lot of suspicion. And then when they did just a little bit of investigation, the guy took himself out of both games, folks. One game he said he re-aggravated an eye injury. Another one, he was just sick. Obviously, those unders cashed, and so they conducted an investigation, right? And I think a lot of people who feel very queasy about the relationship that professional sports teams in America now have with the gambling companies, they see this as like, oh man, this is a dark omen for things to come. I don't necessarily agree with that, and here's why. Jontay Porter is on a two-way contract, and prorated this year, he's going to make something like $411,000. The amount of bets that DraftKings noticed were being made on behalf of his under $10,000, $20,000 for actual established NBA players. That's just a drop in the bucket money-wise. And then for stars, forget about it. The idea that you would risk a lifetime ban in this league, shame your name, your family, put your money at risk, your hundreds of millions at risk to be placing these kind of bets is crazy. And I think, honestly, this is another example of things working the way they should. Something that was previously outlawed is now heavily regulated. And so whenever discrepancies do arise, the authorities and the powers that be can notice it and stamp it out immediately. They saw these irregularities, and because this stuff is regulated and above board, they could figure this out immediately and contact, the requisite authorities. When I hear people say it's very hypocritical for the leagues to come out and say we're in bed with these gambling companies, but our players can't bet. Excuse me, if you're an NBA player and one of the very few constraints on your life is that you're not allowed to gamble on NBA games, I'm sorry, that's not some crazy rule to levy on the population of NBA players. I don't think it's any different than something from like insider trading on Wall Street or, a myriad of other things that you're just not allowed to do. Or, maybe if you work in the government and you have power of legislation over companies, you shouldn't be able to buy stocks. Wait a second, you can actually do that if you are in the government. So scrap that example. But you guys get what I'm trying to say here. We have this almost religious, pious views around sports. And I think gambling and the legalization of it and the integration of it into mainstream sports sort of challenges those conceptions of sport. In other places around the world, in Europe and in Asia, the gambling stuff is not weird. It's not weird to have sports booking stadiums. It's not weird that it's ingratiated within the greater professional leagues abroad. And so I think us as Americans, we can get over it and figure this out. I'm happy this thing got caught. I'm happy they tamped it out. And I hope that Adam Silver makes an extreme example of this dude to send the message that no, we will not have the reputation of our game impugned this way. And yeah, don't even think about doing this. Next player who might want to place a freaking parlay on his weak ass under. Anyway, that's my feeling on that. All right, guys, let's get into vibe check. This week, we have the Phoenix Suns, who, as of this recording, sit with the Sacramento Kings at 7th place in the Western Conference. They're 9-8 since the All-Star break, basically barely a 500 team. Things just haven't clicked in the way that I myself believed would for the Phoenix Suns this year. It was nice that they brought Royce O'Neal in. He's been kind of a boon to their depth. And it's been a major piece for them, but it's just not working in the ways that we hoped. And recently, these guys had one of the worst losses of the NBA regular season. Again, the Suns are fighting for their play-in lives. They played the San Antonio Spurs, who happen to be one of the worst teams in the NBA, without Victor Wembanyama, and they lost. Just horrible. They've lost to the Spurs 3 times this year somehow. Again, one of the worst teams in the NBA, and I think the biggest problem for them is that, and I'm not the first person to point this out, their fourth quarter offense is not just bad, it's actually freaking horrific. Right now, they have the worst offensive efficiency in the fourth quarter in the NBA for the season. That's a pretty nice sample size, guys. The idea that this team can't execute down the stretch. I was somebody who thought maybe the point guard situation wouldn't be the biggest deal, right? That they didn't have a pure sort of table setter point guard like they used to in Chris Paul, that they would do it by committee with, Bradley Beal and Devin Booker. It just hasn't worked out. And the idea that this team would struggle on offense this way in the biggest moments of the game, that just doesn't bode well for their future. As you guys know, they've got one of the highest payrolls in the NBA. Their new owner came in and decided to spend his way into contention, but contention shouldn't look like a play-in, guys. This has been completely underwhelming. They have about 10 games left to turn this whole thing around. And I'm sorry, fingers gotta be pointed at KD. He's the leader of the team. He's the best player on the team. He's the one that should be galvanizing this group to get better results, and that he hasn't been able to deliver on that promise, man. It's quite disappointing. I was watching Bill's podcast the other day right here on YouTube, and he mentioned that KD, is one of the more polarizing players. I don't think KD's polarizing. I think people feel indifferent about him, and it's because all of his situations, basically since he left OKC way back in 2016, have been underwhelming. Yes, he won those championships in Golden State, but it was drama-free. There was nothing compelling about what those guys did. They beat the brains out of everybody they played, but it didn't feel like the competition was fair. And so people haven't felt wowed by KD's postseason accomplishments. Obviously, Brooklyn went up in flames. Last year, Phoenix was, they put that thing together last minute. They sort of kind of coalesced. And, the God bless them, they went against the buzzsaw on the Denver Nuggets. Took 2 games off of them. Respect for that. But, that was underwhelming second-round appearance. And so it's all KD to sort of turn the narrative around him and this team. Because right now, they're looking like a classic also-ran, and they're looking pretty damn expensive to be doing so. Before we get out of here, man, we got to address Monty Williams and what is clearly developing into a New York City beef. I don't think there's been a person who's hated New York City more than Monty Williams since probably Tupac.
Where's the New York media now?
It's kind of ridiculous, this guy's vendetta. Why do I say that? Obviously, we covered that here on In My Feelings when Monty Williams was in his feelings the last time before this that they played the New York Knicks when, there was a missed call and they lose at the end of the game and the wins are hard to come by, and we get it. Now, a reporter asked him about Donte DiVincenzo breaking the Knicks franchise record for three-pointers made in a single game. He's asked about the performance.
I don't care about their team at all. I could care less. Those guys, the way they got those threes, I don't want to be a part of that story.
What he's referencing, guys, is that the game was a little bit out of hand. It was clear Detroit couldn't win, but DiVincenzo's teammates wanted to see him break the record. So they kept feeding him, and he kept bombing away and making threes. I don't see anything wrong with that. If Monty Williams has a problem with guys making shots, your team got to play better defense. I'm sorry. This whole thing where he gets pissed every time the Knicks do something against his team, he's gotta relax, man. Somebody gotta take Monty Williams to Peter Luger's or something. Take him to a Broadway show, man. Get him on that ferry to the freaking Statue of Liberty. Somebody show this guy that New York City has some redeeming qualities so he can calm down in the future. All right, folks, that's our show for today. Make sure you're subscribed to the Ringer NBA feed. Also, make sure you hit the notification bell so that you get notified each and every Friday when the show comes out. And make sure you like this video. If you like what we're doing, give us that thumbs up, like this video. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.